Okay, hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Deep Dive with Otelli and myself, Steve. Now, Otelli, I'm gonna ask you, you look like a really sporty person. I know it's been a while since you've been running, that used to be your thing, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever tried pickleball?
So, no, I'm more of a paddle tennis fan, but that's only because I've
Oh.
not tried, not tried pickleball. But I hear or read in the news that apparently it's so popular these days.
Yeah.
It's even more stressful than, say, booking a wedding spot. That's what I was told, yeah.
Wow. Okay, I haven't tried it myself, so I don't know, but it is getting a bit of attention and putting everyone in a bit of a pickle, if I may say so.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, a recent CNA report highlighted how the boom has everyone fighting for a space, but not just the space; it's the noise.
The noise as well. So just going back to back in 2014, right, when pickle court bookings was first made at Active SG Sports Halls, there were actually fewer than 20 bookings a month.
Okay.
And guess now, how many bookings per month, just in the first half of the year?
200.
8,000.
8,000, wow. Clearly, the supply is not catching up with demand, and this has got a whole bunch of folks talking about how we are allocating spaces for recreational activities. Plus, let's not forget, Singapore is small. Every piece of land is very precious. How is it affecting people who live in the surrounding environments as well?
That's correct. So plenty to cover today. And for today's discussion, our guests, we have Ganesh Ramalingam, founder of the Pickleball Social Crew.
Hello, happy to be here.
And we also have Tan Shin Bin, assistant professor at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, focusing on urban planning. Hello.
Ganesh, let's start with you. Why has pickleball just become so popular? What's going on?
So I think for the past few years from the US, it's been the most growing sport. I think social media has also played a part. People enjoy seeing how pickleball is played. There's more videos coming up. And it's easy to pick up. So you could pick up a paddle, try playing with someone, and I can assure you within a day, you'll learn how to play pickleball.
So there's a low entry barrier in terms of trying to get into the sport. But I know the pickleball players out there, the younger ones are going to hate me for saying this, but when I first heard pickleball, I thought it was sort of like an old person sport.
Yep.
But turns out that it's not. Actually, a lot of young people, they use it as a mingling session, like a social sort of event.
Correct. So I would say it's mixed from young to old, and I've been trashed by a lot of old players, and I still do get it till now. I guess the intensity varies in different age groups.
Okay.
So it's versatile where you could play it with the older crowd and you could play it with the younger crowd. And that's really the beauty of the sport, because hence, anyone could play it very easily at any very small space, like a badminton court.
And just to clarify for some of our listeners who may not know it so well, essentially it's like playing mini tennis,
Yep.
smaller court. The ball is kind of a plasticky ball with holes in it, right?
Yep,
So
right.
the ball doesn't move as fast, which is why it's easier for players to also handle the game, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, which means that's why you're saying just about anyone can pick up the sport really easily.
That's correct.
Okay, so this is the part where we're struggling with. I mean, a lot of players have come out saying that it's harder to book the courts because there're just not enough of them.
So, Shinbin, when it comes to allocating spaces, especially in land-scarce Singapore, what are some of the factors that go into it? Because, some people will say pickleball is just, might be a trending thing.
That's
it might
right.
not be around or as popular in the next 5 years. So what goes into the planning process?
Well, if you think about it, Singapore has a very well-oiled machine, I think, when it comes to allocating space, because at the primary source of it, right, is that kind of insecurity that we don't have enough space. So because of that, there's a lot of care and concern into making sure that every plot of land is put to good use, right? So what happens is at the governmental level, the Urban Redevelopment Authority would work with everyone who needs land, I think, in Singapore to try to figure out what's the best use of land. So you might have heard of the master plan, the draft master plan, which is ongoing right now in URA. And that kind of sets the framework for land allocation in Singapore more generally. So figuring out what the nation needs at a really broad level, looking, forward in time, looking at multiple needs from agencies to, citizens and so on. And I think it's like a huge balancing game that the authorities try to do to
Right.
make sure that land is optimally allocated. I would
So,
say.
but it's not specific to say.
I was just going to say, so imagine in the master plan,
That's
is
right.
there a space catered for pickleball?
I would say they
Right.
definitely have space planning involved with sports facilities more generally, and like kind of open spaces and parks. So those big users should be taken care
But
of.
it means the pickleball, tennis, badminton, everyone's going to be fighting for that same designated designated recreational space, correct?
I think it's fair to say that every plot of land in Singapore is probably contested to a certain extent because
Okay.
we have so little land. So the kind of challenges around finding enough space for whether it's pickleball or badminton or even broader, whether we should be putting golf courses or should we be building more affordable housing. I think these are very contested questions.
Right.
So Ganesh, are there any spots in Singapore that you think, or unusual spots that you think, oh, maybe, this could be turned into a pickleball court, I don't know, underground, a rooftop or...
Yep.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I think in Dover, they're already piloting this where they're turning over the car park rooftops to sports facilities.
Okay.
So I think it is happening, and that's one possibility over there.
Rooftop, I've always thought the balls, would they?
Fly over the side?
So-
Yeah. I mean, it is a light
Yeah.
ball.
It doesn't
but
fly
still-
too far. That's the upside of it, right?
Well, pre-tell
Yeah,
Ganesh.
yeah. So I think in Hong Kong or some other countries, they've built up like a huge fence around it. Some street soccer court has that as well.
So it's doable.
It's doable.
Yeah.
Definitely doable.
Or even under flyovers, I've seen, actually, I know of an archery
Yep.
sport that is under a flyover, they've got, because it's kind of high and a lot of
Yep.
space. And I mean, no one really goes to the middle of a flyover for no apparent reason, right?
Yep.
So if you had them there, and this is also, it would work because noise is one of the other issues that people are upset about. The ball is a bit, we're
Yeah.
saying, we're
Yeah.
trying to describe the sound, but it's kind of like
Yeah.
a pop, pop, pop
Yeah.
kind of sound, right?
Yeah,
Correct.
and it's twice. I mean, it's like louder than tennis, for instance.
Oh,
I think
way
in terms
louder.
of the
Yeah.
decibel levels and all that.
So a flyover is perfect because I won't hear a thing because the cars are just zooming by anyway.
Yeah, that's correct. That's right.
How big an issue is the noise?
Wow. I'm a huge pickleball fan, so
Yeah.
I'm going to be slightly biased and say I
You
don't
are the
think,
founder.
Yeah, I
You don't hear it anymore.
Yeah,
It's
I don't
a
hear any
soothing sound
yeah,
for
yeah,
you.
correct. Very melodious. But I think what's really happening is it's a very unique sound that people are not very used to. So people find it irritating at times.
Okay.
Aside from the sound, I think there could be another issue where people are sharing the spaces. So they feel that if they don't want to be sharing the space, the first thing they could point out was, oh, this sound is not really very appealing. Or
So do you get like maybe the badminton players, they come over to the
Yeah.
court and trying to, tell these pickleball players like, hey, this is meant for badminton players, for instance, and
yeah.
then there is that territorial,
Yep.
standpoint.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
what do we do? I mean, what do your members say to you when they encounter that?
So we normally hold the sessions more on like private courts, so we don't
Okay.
have to deal with it most recently. But when I'm playing with some of my friends in smaller settings, this happens a lot. But I wouldn't say it's just the badminton players alone. So sometimes it's the older crowd who are not very used to the sound and they see a new sport being played there, so you shouldn't do it.
Yeah, this is where the urban planning comes in, right? Because again,
How do we get around that? This is
yeah.
a relatively new sport. I mean, yeah, what do you
and these
think?
are sometimes called multi-purpose courts, which means they're meant to be used for a variety of things, right?
I mean, I think a lot of things comes down to, interpersonal kind of negotiations, right?
Yeah.
I think it's also important to have a set of agreements by the community that uses the space, that they all understand what the rules around it. And maybe I think some of the tensions coming up now is because there isn't a sense of clarity because this is
Okay.
so new and so maybe give it like a couple more months, things will shake up a bit more.
Because right now, I mean, when we can only play in
Yeah.
these outdoor spaces until like 10:30 p.m., right? So there is a cutoff point. So are we saying that it's not clear enough? We need more rules, or
I would say that the contestation over the sound it isn't so much the 10:30, it's just the sound itself, right? I would say. Even I've heard that there are accounts of people being upset also because even during regular hours. So I
Yeah.
think it's in that sense it's not really the rules, but it's the essence of it. Like, can we live with pickleball close to our homes? I think that's really a big question, and I'm not sure whether we have achieved consensus around that because
but Ganesh says he cannot even hear the sound anymore. To him, it's just a matter of
That's only me, right?
Yeah, but it is largely also about managing expectations. So if I'm a shift worker, I take a nap, I sleep from 2 to 5 in the afternoon, I hear this pop, pop, I can't sleep and I have to work, late at night, then I will cry foul, right?
Yeah.
And especially if no one had told me previously that they were going to allow this sport, I'm even more upset. So how much of it has to do with the way we communicate before we start these things? Before you put a pickleball court at the bottom of my flat, did you even tell me or ask me what do I think about it before that?
Yeah. So how I think about it is maybe aside from just the pickleball sound, I think sound is always perceived to be manageable from like 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. So let's
Yeah.
say if it's speakers or if it's any other sound aside from like pickleball, we normally manage that and we say it's okay. It's only for a short period of time. So it's quite interesting why pickleball specifically is flagged out for its sound versus like any other activity.
Okay, suddenly tomorrow there's a new sport that comes around to rival like pickleball, right? How do the urban planners manage this sudden curveball? In that instance, if let's say there's another sport that comes around all of a sudden, then how do we manage this
Yeah. So
curveball?
I'm going to caveat and say I can't speak for URA, but I can give you my sense of what I think would be a reasonable way to do it. I mean, I think for one is there's kind of a fine line between being flexible and adaptive versus being reactive, right? So I think you need to also let things kind of stabilize a bit to figure out whether this is a real shift in sporting activity that you need to cater for because it's legitimate, or whether it's kind of a trend thing. You don't want to go in and build all the infrastructure and do all the clearances and essentially put a lot of labor and taxpayers' money into figuring this out. And then 3 months later, Singaporeans have moved on to the next fad. And the thing about infrastructure is that once you put it in, it can be expensive, it can be permanent. So I think we need to be careful not to be too reactive to that.
But at the same time, sometimes people ask, you are living in a certain area, and let's say you're walking to the MRT station, they build a path. But then after a while, you realize there's another path which is much shorter.
Right.
Only after it's been well trodden does the authorities then come in and build a path. You think to yourself, why do you just build a path there in the first place? So it is a bit of that chicken and egg kind of situation.
Yeah, so I'll say that you want to say that what's the optimal part.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have an answer to that, but to observe for a bit, if you see like maybe in a couple months people are still, maybe it's worth the investment to put it in. But I also say that it's important to, especially when there are new things coming to our environment, to be very clear about what the impact of it might be, right? So going back to the pickleball example, I would say it's important to consider the noise considerations because those have really it's beyond the nuisance. The way that we live and the noise that we experience in our life has really huge implications for all aspects of health. Because one thing that I really struggle with is for pickleball, it's really exciting because it's like galvanized a whole group of people, like arguably a generation, to participate in activity, to exercise in ways that I think maybe we haven't had previously. So there's a huge health benefit there. But I think that also needs to be weighed against the health and the mental health of residents. Whether there's a real case there, I don't know. We hear sporadic complaints. I think there's need to really investigate that a bit more systematically, to do more, I would say, as a researcher, always thinking about more robust research, doing actual kind of surveys, talking to the people on the ground to figure out how much of it is fringe cases where people are really just, inflexible, don't want to wear earplugs, I don't know what.
And that's really tough, actually, to
very
find
tough.
out that answer.
Yeah. And also because I think, especially if certain night, maybe why didn't you just like wear earplugs? But probably the people who are affected, I think then why do I have to be subjected to that? Like I live here. So, but whereas Ganesh, just tell us like in terms of your interaction with the worst complaint you've ever received, because of whether it's noise or because they're just residents are irritated. What are some of the cases you've seen?
I think maybe during the first year when I was playing, some of the neighbors would say, I'm going to call the police, I'm going to call town council, and then we try to have an amicable conversation around it, and sometimes we stop playing, and then other times we see whether town council allows us to play.
We could come up with a whole bunch of rules and regulations and say strictly between this time, or you can only play for 45 minutes duration. But I found, I play ultimate frisbee on the weekend, and we play in the park, a public park. Sometimes there are families having picnics, and it's kind of in the middle of the field. So I think it's just a matter of asking nicely. So, we went very often, one of us will go over and just say, hey guys, if you don't mind, would you mind moving to the other side of the field just so we can play on this side? And 9 out of 10 times, people are fine. There'll be that one time some guy is upset, but fair enough.
And then is it just boils down to the society at large, right? That we're just maybe quite impatient sometimes,
We are.
and that we just want it our way or the highway.
And we're very good with rules. You're like, oh, see, this sign says you cannot do this,
Yeah.
So we like to be able to fall back on that. But at the same time, we don't want to have to use the rules to force people to behave a certain way, right?
Yeah. So, I'll add on here. I think Sports SG has been making some changes. So, they have chosen some sports like within schools itself to convert them to pickleball courts over the weekends. And I think recently they put out a SLA tender at Piccadilly.
It's called Piccadilly?
That's correct. It's called Piccadilly. So that building is isolated out, not just for pickleball alone. So I think they are trying to make this happen. But I personally think what we have forgotten in this whole issue is that we used to have a very strong kampung spirit when we were playing sports. You know, I used to grow up in a neighborhood where I came down, I could just play sports and then go back home. I think if we can build up that spirit again, where people could just come, learn about the sport, be introduced to it, I think they would perceive or look at the sport differently, and the sound might not.
And that's
be
a very
Yeah.
good point, because pickleball, you know, the young and the old, the middle aged, everybody can play the sport. So, it's bringing
if-
back the kampung spirit.
If my young son is playing pickleball with an uncle there, I probably won't complain because it's my own son, right? But if somebody else is playing, then you're like, hey,
Yeah.
noisy, right?
Can I go back to the idea of the kampong spirit thing? I mean, I really enjoy it, but at the same time, Singapore, when we had kampong spirit, was also a very different type of city, right?
Yeah.
We were not so tense. We were much more spread out. Arguably, the sound concerns, the stress concerns are not so much. I also wonder the impatience that we have with each other is really also, to a certain extent, a product of our environments as well.
Okay.
So to just say that maybe we can just live and let live, I think we might require a bit more than just like, you know, regulating our emotions. I think it might have to do with the way our society kind of organizes itself, our priorities in life, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's not just about regulating emotions. It's more about getting to know one another. Because like what he said, if you know that this person is your friend's son, you wouldn't feel the same way about the
That's
sound
true.
anymore.
Than a stranger,
like, hey, that's
yeah.
his son, you know, like, and then you'll be fine. I think what's missing here is people coming together and interacting with one another and experiencing the sport. And then after that, if they decide and say, yeah, the sound is irritating,
Yeah.
then I think it's fair. But we are at a stage where I hear the sound and I don't like it. There's no
Okay.
in-between layer to experience that.
The government, I mean, they're trying to encourage this healthy lifestyle, right?
Right.
So they want people to be out there exercising, you know,
But
burning
at the
calories
same time,
and all
it's like, I mean, yeah, they'll be saying, yay, health promotion board is very happy, but then it's the not in my backyard syndrome, as in go play, but don't play here. Right? So that's one of the things we also want to talk about. Are there other solutions available? So we talk about these dead spaces in Singapore. Do you think there's a in-between, Shinbin, that we can find? Are there actually a lot of places that we may not have thought about that could work for this specific sport?
I do know that there is, like you also mentioned, the dual use kind of schemes. I think there's desperate attempts right now to try to eke out exactly these kind
Yeah.
of spaces, to be very opportunistic about it. So I would say that it's a definitely something that's on the kind of the radar of the
Right.
decision makers, the people who do the land planning and so on.
Yeah, is it possible that we just run out of creative solutions just because Singapore is, you know, I mean, it's dense and it's small.
Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
sense. My sense is like we are really dealing with a finite resource, and no,
Yeah.
to a certain extent, no amount you can squeeze is going to stretch that budget. And the same way, money is never enough, right? I think in this instance, land is never enough. So it's about how do we make use, how do we negotiate, how do we work as a community, right, to balance everybody's needs. I think that's very critical.
There are also other dense cities, right? Tokyo, Seoul, Hong Kong, these places. I mean, how are they dealing with this space constraint issue? Do we know?
I think they're also fighting over it. I mean, I feel like
Yeah, I'm
any
sure.
major city you see, like the unique part about Singapore is I think we really look to the government and be like, oh, this is the guideline that this authority figure has run, follow it. That might not be the case in other cities where there's a bit more kind of, I guess, freedom to stake your claim or
That's right.
whatnot. So I think the fighting might become more localized rather than always looking to Big Brother. But I don't know whether that's ideal in all cases as well, because, I mean, what is the role of government but to sometimes help smooth over some of the disputes? I think that's a valuable role as
A
well.
bit of both.
So it's a bit of both.
You know, we always talk about tolerance and compassion and all of that. And I'm wondering whether Singaporeans are just maybe becoming just less of
Tolerant,
that.
less compassionate.
Just that, yeah.
Yeah.
And just, yeah, I mean.
Selfish, I think so. Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, but it's again back to what you said. You know, because of the environment we live in, where there's so much competition, we're always feeling stressed about our jobs, about our kids' education. So there are a lot of things which weigh down. It's almost, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, the future of recreation. What does that mean? You see, for Singapore. Any thoughts?
I think this will be a mix of sports and social. So if this can be combined together, and a lot of that happens within the Pickleball social.
So like the
group.
new Tinder.
That's one way of looking at it, yes,
Okay.
for sure. But I think generally people come together to interact one another, have a good game, and then go eat after that. So when that is combined together, then recreation becomes.
Yeah, it's a
like-
nice change. You
That's
know,
right.
like get your face out of your phones and your iPads and whatnot.
So you
and
need to have the
meet
pickleball
and
court, then you
mingle.
have the prata stall next door.
Yeah.
Ah,
That's a winning combo.
Well,
yeah, that's right.
HDB is not going to be happy with the prata stuff.
Okay, maybe put it 500 meters away, so you have to
You have to walk,
exercise in
that's
between.
right.
Yeah.
One last thing, you did mention that there are some options that so-called silent pickleball
Yep,
balls.
Yeah, correct.
Right?
So, I mean, technology is trying to be picked up in this
Yeah.
area as well. So, there's like silent pedals, silent balls that's being built up.
Like silent disco.
Wow.
yeah.
But wouldn't the players mind? Because part of the whole excitement
feeling,
about,
right?
is that pop, pop sound, right? When you know
Yeah.
you've landed that,
Yeah.
that sweet spot, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you think that is really the answer?
Can I say that I think in a case where we are like really fighting to find compromise, right? I mean, what do the pickleball players lose when they lose the sound versus what do the residents lose when they lose the sound? I
Yeah.
think it's important to weigh the relative
That's right.
Yep.
benefits and costs. So,
Yep.
I mean, as a non-pickleball player, I would really be very excited if the balls are a little
Yep.
quieter.
So, I think maybe the city of Ottawa has come up with a framework over here. So, I think they try to manage it around like 50 decibels
Okay.
over there.
Right now it's about 70 decibels, right?
Yeah, correct.
Oh.
So they have a certain way to benchmark it. I personally think that the noise might not be the only problem because there's no way we are validating the sound
Sure.
level at this point of time. So if we really isolate and say noise is the issue, then I think we can deal with it. But what happens if we deal with the sound and the issue
still-
persists?
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a
Yeah.
bit tricky, you know. Like,
So again, it's about having the conversations and just, I guess, everyone coming to the table and saying, okay,
Yep.
let's talk about this and figure out what works best for everyone. you
Yeah.
know?
So maybe it's really not about having whether we have enough pickleball courts or
No.
not, or the sound, but it's just actually just tolerance, right? And just
Yeah,
be patient
yeah,
and just talk it out.
Okay,
So,
well, I
yeah,
guess
no,
we'll
yeah.
leave that, and everyone who is playing pickleball is still very much in a pickle. How could I resist that? Okay, they just can't be too picky, even though they're pickleball players.
Okay, enough.
Yeah,
Let's just
enough.
move on to the wrap. Yeah.
Thinking of more. Okay. Anyhow, folks, we always do love hearing from you. So if you have any thoughts, if you're a pickleball fanatic, if you love playing it and you feel that you know the solution, well, let us know. I think we'd love to share it with everyone out there. But
Okay.
otherwise, yeah.
Yep. Thank you so very much for listening. As usual, this is all possible. All big thanks to our team: Tiffany Ang, Junani Johari, Joanne Chan, Saye Win, Hope Ning, Ned Fetelvaro, Alison Jenna, and video by Hanida Amin and Azli Azman.
The way you said all made possible, I thought we had
All made-
sponsors for a moment there. I was like, wow.
Maybe tomorrow we'll get
Maybe
one.
we're getting more ka-ching, but unfortunately not. See you
right.
guys next week.
See you.
Bye.